Hello, welcome to Summoner's Rift. This is gonna be versus Nature's Wrath. I'm Abbatrombone and I'm joined by Inigo Montoya.
Hello, hello. We should have a very good game in between Nature's Wrath and Mythic Esports right now. Seed 1 and Seed 4 of the Ionia division. It's the second highest division that we have. And we are already in draft right now. Nature's division taking out that Jarvan, and Mythic Esports now taking out the Aurelion Soul, which we have definitely seen Pognometron not afraid to play, playing that twice in their last series that they played. Ash also being taken out, another one that Mythic Esports has been playing. So yeah, Mythic Esports, it should be noted that they are using two subs in this game, sub in the top lane and sub in the support, but did not stop them from 2-0ing Rat Pack last week.
Yeah, those are exciting games to be watching if you were there last week. And these are some pretty interesting bands. Of course, I expect the Ace Soul. He's been tearing up the Rift recently. But I am not as sure about Ash with the recent changes that have come in to see if that was going to be banned. She's still pretty potent, that it seems like. So we'll have to see if they end up going through some sort of like dive or anti dive on the side of Nature's Wrath, not wanting to deal with an Ash, Irelia, or a Jarvan.
Yeah, definitely. We are
So,
definitely seeing a
yeah.
lot of these picks coming out from both sides. Nature's Rat taking away that Sejuani from the side of Teditor, who definitely was able to pop off a lot in the last season or the last series, going I think 9-3-12. I might be mistaken. 9-3 definitely, but he showed up on that champion. So taking that away from him, it's definitely be interesting to see what bot lane they end up choosing and what it's some of these other lanes that they end up picking up instead to take away from that first pick. So Gragas, the first pick for Mythic Esports right now. Definitely an interesting pick. You don't see that very often. However, you have seen that in Korea. Faker pulling that one out in mid lane.
The classic Faker. Gragas is always an interesting pick. Got some good potential for burst and technically some disengage with his erupting barrel. And we'll have to see what they're going to go with it. If they're going to be picking Caitlyn here, they'll probably be going for a lane bully, try and get some early plates on her, get her ahead, stop the enemy bot lane from advancing, and maybe rotate them into the mid lane and try and split the map up that way. Maybe play for some early dragons.
Yeah, Caitlyn having a lot of pressure in that bot lane, as we've
Ooh.
seen, having that range potential. And to counter that out, we have a Misfortune who, although not having quite the range, definitely with that Q ability, having a lot of potential to poke out this Caitlyn. And Rel, interesting picks here. It's going to be definitely a very interesting ultimate combination there. Hopefully, Rel is able to actually hit those champions and make sure that the distance there is not too much of a problem to be able to bot lane.
Yeah, both Rel and Sejuani do have a dash, but they're on the shorter end of them, so they still have a little bit of mobility. Rel is melee, so they're going to be able to stack Sejuani's passive there to try and get some
Ooh.
stacks onto there. But the Morgana is going to be kind of potent in stopping some of these engages should they want to protect their carry like Caitlyn.
Agreed. And even using that Morgana for some of those picks of themselves. Once a Morgana Q comes out, that bind, Caitlyn just putting those traps down. Gragas also being able to put that casket down as well. So it
Yeah.
becomes extremely dangerous for any champion to be able to hit or to be hit by that dark bind. Now we
Yeah,
have the
Dark
second
Bind
round
plus.
of bans coming out as well.
Oh, yeah, Dark Bind plus the Yordle Trap does a lot of damage. No auto resets on Caitlyn anymore, but it looks like we're going to be trying to stop through the mid lane as well. No Castlewin coming in through to carry this game should the game go late at all. No Voidlings to be had here.
Yeah, and no Elise as well. Being able to take those two champions out so far. And ooh, it looks like Gangplank might be the answer as well. We have definitely seen the top laner for Nature's Wrath not afraid to pick these AD top laners. So Gangplank being able to band out from his side, pushing a little bit more towards that Sejuani in the jungle, they're thinking. And Silas as well being removed from the game too.
Yeah, Mythic does have the red side, so it's going to have the counter pick here. So I'm a little bit surprised to see the Gangplank ban being he's a little bit vulnerable and you're able to abuse him if you have the counter pick in there because Nature's Wrath is going to have to double pick after Mythic picks this first champion.
Yeah, and looks like it will be the Yone. We definitely saw him pop off on that Yone as well. I believe he went 14-1-7 in that game versus Rackpack. So a champion he has a lot of skill and potential to carry the game on his back with. Ooh, but the Singe coming out as well has a lot of games on this champion. I think he has over 30 games on that Singe mid, and it ends up being the pick as well. So it's going to be a very spicy mid lane here with this Poison Boy coming out. And we also have this Gnar coming in the top lane. So definitely a whole lot of potential for these ultimate abilities coming out. This Misfortune, this Rel, this Gnar, all these abilities just being able to absolutely take over a team fight if they are given the opportunity to do it. So should be a very nice time seeing if these teams can pull it out. The last pick for Mythic Esports, the timer running out. Not exactly sure what that's going to
It's
be. And it's going to be
Vlad.
Vlad.
An interesting pick. Yeah, it looks like Nature's Wrath. The name's going to be pretty apt here. They're going to be fighting the jungle, utilizing these choke points where they can hit their skill shots or force the team into some CC. Well, bullet time wreaks havoc on them.
Indeed. And knowing that top lane, that Gnar versus Vlad, Vlad does have a little bit of edge early on in that fight. And especially if he knows how to use that pool, Gnar is not going to have a very fun time. But hopefully, Sejuani is actually able to make the difference inside of some of these team fights or some of these top fights that they have. That 2v2 is going to be very interesting to see, that Gragas Vlad versus Gnar and Sejuani. I had to put some of my edge onto the Gnar Sejuani early on, especially this early CC ability that they have.
Yeah, all that CC. You can only Black Shield one champion here. Yone does have a little bit of a cleanse on himself for sure, but that might not be enough. If you dive in, you might just get locked in. You're gonna have to get back to your soul, and you'll be possibly too far away from your team if you're not, careful.
Yeah, agreed. And we're just gonna have to see how both these teams play out. It's gonna be a lot of, as we're saying, a lot of focus on this mid lane. And honestly, all of these lanes have a lot of kill potential. Not top lane probably being the least of them of all three of these lanes. Gnar versus Vlad. Just seeing that Vlad wants to farm up, especially getting that first item in. And then after that, maybe seeing some fight potentials coming out. But this mid lane and this bot lane are just going to be non-stop action. Morgana trying to hit these dark binds, Yone trying to hit these knockups, and Mix Singe try and pay for, picking this non-mobile mid laner aside from his speed. And we're also gonna have to see if Singe just, leaves the lane and tries to go for these side lanes instead, making the difference in those battles instead.
Yeah, there's probably going to be a bloodbath in the bot lane here, knowing kind of how some of these teams want to be playing. Singe can just kind of clear his wave, dash over, probably taking phase rush just to get there even faster and move around in these team fights. And then if you're stickied in, you can't flash or anything, which makes it relatively easy for a lot of CC to land.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to see if that CC ends up being the difference in some of these team fights. If one of these true carries comes out and does not end up entering the fight beforehand, Caitlyn, Yone, Vladimir, they're all very, very susceptible to that CC. And like you said, Morgana only has one black shield, so only one of these carries is really going to be able to live and try and play these fights carefree from that CC.
Yeah.
Um,
Mythic does have a little bit of mobility, and Vlad can always pull out right afterwards. We might be seeing maybe a possible cleanse in someone, but I don't necessarily suspect that with how their team's built. So they might be able to dodge. So Black Shield might not be needed on everyone, but it'll certainly be an important cooldown that'll be kept track of.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely gonna keep my eye on this Singe. Maybe not even for the matchup, just to see how Singe mid ends up playing out. Probably one of the first times and only times I'll be able to see this champion in that lane.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times. It's a very interesting lane to witness. It's been a while, possibly even a season since I've seen it, but it's always different. It's kind of nice seeing in some of these, big 5v5 games, seeing how the meta changes just a little bit when you have a little bit more coordination on your team rather than solo queue where you're wondering who's doing what and why. There's going to be a clear directive as to what each team is going to want to be doing in a lot of these plays.
Yeah, and now it looks like we're just going to have to see how these teams play out and which team ends up taking the lead in these early games, these early skirmishes, and then maybe in these team fights as well over objectives. So as we look into this game, we're going to be seeing Nature's Wrath on blue side versus Mythic Esports, game 1 of the Ionia winners bracket, seed 1 versus seed 4. So don't go anywhere. We're going to take a small break as we let both of these teams get into it.
Okay, and then unmute casters in 3, 2, 1, go. Hello, welcome back. We're starting the early game right here. It looks like there's a possible invade that's going to be met by a 5-point by nature.
Yeah, 5-point nature. Although they are getting a little
Yeah.
spicy so far. You have Singed and Sejuani getting those early wards on that top lane. Pog and Luckified knowing exactly that they are in no danger at all to get that ward down.
Yeah, knowing where the enemy jungler is really helps set up your pathing, not only as a jungler, but as one of the side lanes where you're potentially going to be ganked. Uh, Pog probably is not going to be very gankable with Flash, Ghost, and Predator as well, starting with the early boots. Just is going to be very mobile and harder to punish in this matchup.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how that level 1 ends up going. I know you're a little bit more familiar with that Singed matchups that that he might be able to play against. But as someone who definitely doesn't know, it looks like he's just going for that early poison in that mid lane, just trying to get the push down. So, yeah.
Yeah, the main thing with Singed is you want to get the push to unlock your roam timers. It's not like top Singed where you're just trying to proxy the waves and get some farm in there and really screw up the
Mm.
top laners playing. So you have to figure out, well, how is the mid laner going to play, and then what can I do to disturb that? It's almost like a kind of like a counter, or just kind of playing to the antithesis of what your opponent would want.
And we also had to point out that Teditor and Phil ended up switching positions here. So Yone going in that top lane against Gnar, and Vladimir ends up going against this Singed instead.
Oh my
So
gosh,
a
the
little bit of a
misfortune.
switch there. Definitely a worse matchup for this Gnar, as definitely
Yeah.
playing that. Is very unfortunate for him to be able to have that switch done to him. And a little bit of an early level 2 from the side of Anvinel, but not quite being able to get down that CC. So
Yeah,
Black Shield
not
definitely
quite.
coming in clutch early on.
Misfortune getting in some excellent trades with Xeno. Auto Q, good reset, and get a bounce back for the love tap, get a lot of extra damage, and that's not enough autos
Yeah.
for Ladyboys to get headshot.
Ooh, and we end up having an early gank away from Luckified, getting that knock in
Oh,
and the pushback, and he will end up being the first blood inside of this mid lane. Gragas, Greg not being able to make it mid before Luckified ends up murdering the mid laner. So Teditor able to really wish that he had that flash in that lane right now.
yeah. Yeah, he's a very mobile, and you can really set up how Luckified operates, right? Like you're a melee champion, you get to throw him over, and once you're in those earlier levels, it's harder to escape, even with phase rush, because you have a little extra distance to go through, and that's what makes mid lane so safe. It's shorter, but if your opponent, just kind of tosses you back, you're gonna get caught out and die. And as a scaling champion, being behind early isn't where you want to be.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a very hard time for him to be able to make this lane work. Especially, it takes maybe 1, 2 items for Vlad to be able to really push back against this Singed wave clear that he has. So Singed is just going to be able to really take over in this mid lane and definitely using, as you said, those roam timers to his advantage.
Yeah, especially with a Dark Seal, it looks like MTC Greg is going in for an early invade. It doesn't look like we're going to be diving a Gnar anytime soon, which makes sense. But with your missing jungle, that's a good punish for that mid lane gank we ended up seeing.
Yeah, and we see
Flash.
Luckified ends up going for that bot lane flash or flash support for ADC, but Luckified ends up hitting VXS, and oh, the Black Shield doesn't allow him to be able to pop that stun. And so now VXS is able to actually end up alive with his flash, although burned, but his life's still intact.
Yeah, surviving a gank just means you're going to be absorbing a lot of pressure. Black Shield putting in a lot of work there, making sure they stay safe. But there's a decent amount of poke you have on Misfortune, so it's possible to kill. I've definitely love tapped people under tower, getting some early kills versus Caitlyn. It's exactly what you want to be seeing. But when you're this pushed up, you have to worry about the enemy jungler.
Yeah, and we'd also have to look in this top lane as well. Anthony and Phil going blow for blow, getting extremely low on both sides. And it looks like that bot lane of Nature's Grass ends up wanting to go for this Drake, but I don't know if they can actually be able to do this right now. Yeah, and it looks like they're just going to back up a little bit. Ooh, Pog taking that first turret shot ends up actually it may
Oh,
lose
the
his life. That
ignite.
ignite coming out, but it will be enough to kill him. Pog Namatron ends up being the trade back for Teditor in that 1v1.
Yeah, Ignite there and minions doing a lot of work. Although it looks like Anthony might be getting chunked out a little bit. No, looks like there's gonna be a back. When you're ahead as a scaling champion, that's exactly where you want to be because your weakest phase isn't going to feel as weak, and you're going to be able to get that late game feeling sooner into the game, which will help carry your team. And Vlad is a champion that pops off.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of those champions where it's so hard to actually catch him with that pool, but it's so easy for him to be able to dish out loads of AoE damage with that E coming out. And now both ultimates coming out in this top lane. Ooh,
Oh,
Phil ends up trying to go for the
Vlad.
ultimate, but the flash from Anthony, and it looks like it just will not be enough for either team to lose out there.
Yeah,
So Anthony burning that flash for that survival.
yeah, the flash making sure no one got caught out there. The ultimate making sure Anthony's just a little bit beefier here. And it looks like a TP advantage might be able to be accrued with the way Anthony's able to get this push under. Both champions haven't backed until now, 6 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, which is quite a while for top lane.
Yeah, Nard able to get out that Sheen boots and a longsword. We have Berserker's Greaves coming out from Yon, so definitely some strong buys from both of these sides. Now these autos after the Q making a lot of difference for this Gnar, for Anthony to be able to trade back like he's been doing.
The bounce and the misfortune. Looks like Luckified is just going to be getting out here. They have a good rotation because the bot lane is able to be shoved, but they might be playing for these dragon here, both mythic and nature, with how the lanes have been pushing up and where the junglers are currently hovering right now.
Yeah, both junglers sitting on this bot lane. It may end up being a 3v3 fight that they're trying for. Oh, but Luckified ends up hitting a little bit of a trap there. Not too consequential there, unfortunately, for the side of Mythic. But definitely a nice little catch out for them.
Yeah, it's not Yu-Gi-Oh! No trap cards here. It's just going to be a little bit of a minor thing to go for. Although, once you hit level 13 on Caitlyn, that's a lot more damage on headshot.
Hmm. All right, and we have to be able to see Luckified. Seems like he might be looking towards this mid lane right now, walking over a ward, but does not look like Teditor is really caring that much. Still trying to push in, and it may end up making him fall. The
Cool.
ghost coming out from his side, the Predator out from Pognometron, and he will be able to catch him. But the flash out from Pog, trying to make sure that he lives, and it looks like he will just barely. A lot of damage coming out from Luckified onto this Teditor to see if he's going to be able to get one last. Oh, but
Yes!
Anthony coming out just in time, and Greg
Double.
also getting caught with the pullback, the flip over his head. Bognometron playing a very dangerous game with 0 HP, but does not matter.
The top rotation coming into play, being able to use this TP because of the slow push beforehand that Phil ended up having to use is really helping enable this. And it means there's 2 more stacks on Singed with his Dark Seal that he bought right after that first play.
Yeah, definitely a lot of damage and almost a kill onto Phil here. Ooh, Anthony
Having to
almost going for the 3 stack within a minute.
Yeah.
Not quite getting that last one, but ooh, getting very close.
Having to chug those refill pots there being under tower. There's no Vampiric Scepter here to really help you heal out, so Greg might have to be absorbing the wave that's crashing in here while Phil tries to get a back, which isn't what you want to be seeing, because if you know where the jungler is, especially if they're topside, that could free up Dragon.
They actually might be able to go for this kill. Anthony not able to get Meganar, and it looks like that will be it. Phil still having that ultimate ability, and Greg being able to move over. Anthony not having Meganar for quite some time, and the fate sealed ends up being Nars instead.
Yeah, a lot of resources were used in that rotation. So they were down, and when you're shoved up with no vision, you're going to get caught out, especially if the enemy jungler is going to be there to try and lock you down and get some kills there, and you should have your resources up. This could be a possible rift or just a good reset. Try and get some of that gold spent for both sides, quite frankly.
Yeah, it looks like it's just going to be an objective switch for both sides. Cloud going over to the side of Nature's Grass, while Mythic Esports picks up that Rift. So the difference of the stacking Drakes versus the early gold. Ooh, and the Predator coming out from Singe. It looks like he will be able to get the flip, and it's going to be a lot of CC for him
Oh,
to
the bullet
able to
time.
get out of, but not quite. And 300 gold going over to Xenodrix, his first kill of the game.
Yeah, four people showing up kind of suggests who's going to be winning that side. That's a lot of resources spent there. And this did stop Greg from doing the Rift Herald being. There could have been a flow into there as well. So that could be another objective on the side of nature.
Ooh,
Sitting here at an
Anthony able
800
to
gold
get
lead.
this Mega Gnar, and looks like it might be a lot of damage. The pullback not coming out from Yon just yet, but Anthony not wanting to commit, not knowing where Greg was just yet, so not trying to push his luck even further. However, Luckified is here to back up, make sure he has enough to go around. But Greg is also here.
Oh,
Unfortunately, he does not know that Luckified is on the other side. Oh, but it does not matter. Luckified ends up falling into the arms of Greg, and Anthony kills Phil, but may end up losing his life in the process to Greg on the backside.
yeah, a beautiful 2-for-1. Being able to play to your towers means you're probably going to be able to live there. It was a very well played on both sides, but it has to be a decisive win here on the side of Mythic Esports, getting a lot out for the top
Yeah,
side play.
Ampano actually looking for this Morgana right now, getting the knockback and gaining the slow, but ends up being caught by the Dark Binding, losing a lot of health. That Ignite not being just enough to be able to get the kill. VXesh pushing up a lot, but not quite enough for Xenodrix to be able to get that kill. Not enough for him to push in.
Yeah, and bullet time is not up, and with Rel being so low, Anivel is not going to be able to re-engage and try and get XVH down with their HP being as low as it is right now, and with the waves being kind of in the middle. Ladyboys might be able to push this out because Divine is welcome back, not Divine, Nature.
Yeah, he's be able to get that push in, but Xenodrix ends up staying as well. Now we have to look a little bit towards this mid lane. Teditor still pushing up very far. Lekvi going for this clearing of his jungle, but I don't think that he's gonna wait too long to be able to repeat gank onto the Teditor here.
Yeah, a lot of successful things have been happening mid lane, trying to get Tegiture down and trying to get, your Singe to pop off and roam around, lock some CC down. And with Winded Drake, you're going to be getting to lane even faster with such a fast paced champion.
Yeah, unfortunately, we haven't been able to see Pognometron be able to roam into these side lanes yet. Instead, it's just been all the other lanes coming to his instead. So am interested to see how it's going to work out with this Predator with all this speed coming out and see if he's able to influence some of these side lanes instead of the opposite way around. Ooh, but we have a little bit of a fight in this top lane. Phil taking a lot of damage from Anthony there and ends up having to use his ultimate to get out away from Anthony, getting a lot of pressure on, and that was without Mega Gnar too.
Yeah, speaking of pressure, Rift Herald is going to be crashing in here, probably getting at least 2 plates of gold onto Luckified and anyone else who's there to try and get some of that money as well. Oh,
Ooh, a nice little
Teddy.
fight coming over. Pog getting that flip back, but not a whole lot of damage as he's just now starting to get some of that damage in. Beats of Swifties
Yeah, we're
coming out
singeing. We're
first.
singeing.
Yeah, Singe items coming in. You know, gotta get that speed in first before you get any damage.
Yeah, it looks like the Predator here is mainly not going to be for rotations with how fast Editor is going to be able to clear the waves, but it does kind of cancel out the phase rush. You just kind of have to hit one button rather than land some abilities, and you're able to match some of the mobility, and you're able to flip them over post pool.
Yeah.
Oh, the
And
cherry
just to
shot.
point out, one of those things that you said earlier, the Vampiric Scepter lacking from Yon before, he has it now, and we've seen him get extremely low, but now he's able to heal back up with that Vampiric Scepter. That Bork almost coming through for him now.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder for Anthony to get away once Bork gets around. Of course, he'll still have hop and double hop if he hits a wall or a champion, I believe. But with Yon, he's able to kind of dive in as well with his ultimate and his E. So with Bork slow, that might not be enough with those dashes.
Ooh, the charge forward just missing. A lot of damage coming out from that turret in the top lane. Anthony having to back out here. Now with this Drake coming out, we're going to have to be able to look at these teleports coming in from Anthony. So possibly making a 4v5 for this. I believe it's Mountain Drake coming out. Ooh,
Yeah, it looks
Luckified not actually going over the wall for that one. Ends up being a little bit of a blunder there. The bullet time coming through, a lot of damage coming out, the chains of corruption coming through, the dark binding, but not quite enough to be able to save their life. And now Pognawatron getting the flips, getting the pushes.
Well,
3 members falling for the side of Mythic Esports. Greg trying to run away. And Pognawatron flashing over, making sure he's not be able to body slam out of there, and ends up being a 4-for-0 for the side of Nature's Grasp. Pognawatron playing on the edge of his life, but he does not care.
yeah, Pog is pogging here, setting up a lot of these plays, making sure no one can move in the sticky situation. Speaking
But
of
Anthony
which,
actually doing a lot of damage, so that ends up being an I believe an ace technically, or kind of, but 2 members coming
it's
back
basically
to the
an
side
ace.
of Mythic. Yeah,
Yes.
and
Someone call Alan Swift because that's a lot of damage. Hits this man some Flex Seal. Holy moly. 2 Drakes already sitting 10-4. We're already at a 4K gold lead, which is a pretty substantial lead. That's enough to close out games, although with the early game just being done and with how potent Tediture can be on this Vladimir, they're still in it on the side of Mythic Esports. They can certainly still win this. It's just going to be a little bit harder, and they're going to have to figure out how Nature's going to be spending their resources and what kind of play they're going to be counting for it. Which lane are they going to invest in and get the stonks out of?
Yeah, definitely. I was telling you in this little break that we had that I thought that I played top lane. Unfortunately, that inexperience of me is really coming out in me. I thought that Yon would have a little bit of an easier time with this Yon. Or sorry, Yon would have a little bit easier time with Gnar, but not quite. Gnar has been showing up with this Trinity Force and being able to put the pressure on Phil here.
Well, it
And
was
it's just
very
been
even at the beginning, although
Ooh,
we might be
but
seeing more
Pog actually
growth
getting a little
here.
bit of fight here, getting that root just a little bit, and Teditor having to use that ultimate ability out. The pool just now being used, but not a lot of healing coming out, and ends up being killed in the 1v1, as well as Anthony
The
Anthony killing
flash.
Phil. The flash coming out, so the exploding casket ends up pushing him to safety as opposed into danger.
Yeah, a
And
lot of ultimates we saw on both sides. Ace in the Hold not quite killing out Pogmatron, and the Flash trying to stop Greg from trying to burst them and get that extra tower shot in there.
yeah, I thought
Very potent matchups.
a lot of the pressure of this game was going to be onto the objectives, but ends up just being onto these side lanes. A lot of these 1v1 skirmishes, these 2v2 or these 3v1 ganks that we've been seeing,
Well,
ends up being the main difference maker for the side of Nature's Grasp.
well, yeah, for sure. A lot of objectives have been taken. Every rift has been taken so far, and every dragon's been taken. And it's because of all of these plays and how they're able to set up some of these waves and get some of the advantages, like the early TP advantage, getting that rotation in early on the side of Nature's enabled all of this. And that meant, Gnar isn't going to have to be fighting a Yon here. He's able to get some of those kills. And when you have a little bit of a gold advantage, you can mitigate.
Ooh, the Black Shield not coming
Oh,
out just in time, and now Rel also being able to get out that Magnet Storm. Greg being pulled back in. The Exploding Casket ends up pushing Luckified even deeper into Ladyboys and may end up costing him his
that's a
life, and it
triple.
does. 3 kills falling to the side of Nature's Grasp. A lot of damage and a lot of kills, but it does not end yet. Now looking towards this mid lane, Pognometron looking a little spicy, but not having Teditor underneath this turret for the 3 extra turret shots, not willing to take that fight.
Yeah, not willing to take that fight, especially with 10 Dark Seal stacks. No need to risk them. And you don't want to be fighting into that either, especially when you only have Mythic and Boots, as Teditor does have on Vladimir. It looks like there's going to be a big play here mid. It's the only standing tower on the side of Mythic Esports. And with that being down, that's going to enable a lot
Yeah.
of pressure for these waves to move.
Rider comes out, the pool coming as well, but Anthony and Pognometron are feeling it, and it will be enough. Ooh, but Singe losing half of those Dark Seal stacks, his second death of the game, but this one definitely being the more important one.
Yeah, an eye for an eye, a mid laner for a mid laner. And this is going to rotate into a tower. Shelly going to be doing a lot of work here. They probably won't get the second. Yeah, there's no second charge there. They're able to hit the eye. like a Zelda boss and just knock it out and beat it. It looks like Dragon's going to be coming up here shortly. We'll have to see if they're going to be able to take it up, or if we might be seeing a Baron play with this much of a gold lead, 7,000 at 20 minutes. That's pretty big. 500 gold for every like minute is considered a stomp.
Yeah, a lot of gold onto the side of Nature's Wrath. Ooh, but does look like a sneaky Baron coming out from the side of Mythic Esports. And there's no vision for the side of Nature's Wrath here. So this actually might be a free Baron for them. They're doing a lot of damage onto it. And yeah, no one seems to be rotating over.
Yeah, no one's able to rotate over. They might be able to get a kill or two with the Baron's resistant shreds. But
Yeah, seeing
if
a
you don't
lot
have
of teams
there,
over.
Yeah, if you don't have a team over to punish that, getting that, making sure the enemy team doesn't get it is good. It's also global gold. The objective gold was like, what, 600 extra gold split amongst the team. That's going to really help mitigate some of the gold, that advantage that they have. We're only sitting at like 5,000 now rather than the 7,000. That's a huge swing when you're behind.
Yeah, I believe it's a little bit more than that as well. It should be 300 per member if I do believe.
Well,
I could be wrong.
That's just the objective bounty gold I was talking about for the 600.
Oh, okay.
Plus on top of the normal gold you would get from Baron, and that's what's kind of mitigating it. But the more important thing here is with Baron buff, your minions are going to be stronger, so it's going to be harder for them to push in, and you can kind of fight in your wave a little bit because they're going to be beefier.
Yeah, we end up seeing another fight coming out from Anthony versus Phil. Phil almost hitting the knockup, but not quite, giving Anthony the ability to just trade back all that damage.
Yeah, a lot of damage. Black Cleaver plus Trinity on a Gnar, that's pretty potent when you're going to be able to go in, peel for a lot of your team, just do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Speaking of damage, I haven't seen Navori plus Essence Reaver on Misfortune, but I'm glad to see that it's working as well as it is. I never considered that because I usually, expect like IE being bullet time does scale with crit, so getting a little extra crit damage there is usually what I see. But Navori kind of does that as well.
Yeah. I'm not too familiar on the builds of ADCs, but definitely, yeah, not something I normally see onto that Misfortune build. So interesting to see some different ideas coming out, and yeah, like you said, seeing them prosper from those innovative ideas. But I do want to ask, what do you think is the way that Mythic Esports can come back into this game? Because it seems like they're not doing too well in that top lane fight. The bot lane fight's not doing too well either. Mid lane seems to be really the only hope in that 1v1. But once other players like Luckified come into the equation, it just becomes a lot rougher for Teditor to be able to really do anything. So, what do you think is the way back?
Mythic's been able to play the vision game pretty well, and notably, Tediture is pretty close to a death cap, which might be enough. Just playing for some experience, trying not to die, trying not to get caught out, using that vision to stay safe might be enough. And if you drag the game out just long enough, you might hit your power spikes. Only one more level for Ladyboys to go to get 13 on Caitlyn, which is when your passive is at the strongest. And of course, if Tediture is able to get some of these items onto them, that extra damage can help burst out some of the engages, which means you're not going to be as safe for these fights.
Yeah, it seems like he's almost able to finish that Rabadon's. Ooh, unfortunately, the sealed fate, the fate sealed ends up coming out to save his life in that top lane. So Phil just constantly under pressure from Anthony here.
Yeah, it looks like we're seeing some blue wards here as well. You don't want to be face checking, of course. So just being able to blue ward from a distance, know where the enemy is, and kind of plan out your macro there. Hitting our second item on Lady Boys with a Lord Dominic's Regard going to be helpful to chunk through a Gnar, a Singed, or a Sejuani. So they're going to be dealing a little bit more damage there. And of course, more crit, more headshot damage to go there as well, being it scales with crit.
Ooh, a little bit of bush sitting for the side of Nature's Wrath. Looking towards Greg here. He might be able to get caught out if this Predator ends up coming. It seems like there's going to be a lot of speed coming out, and Greg will end up being the sacrifice here. The flash coming out. Oh, not quite. Oh, but the stun from far away ends up being the difference, and Greg falls. Pognometron using that massive speed up from his passive to be able to run down Ladyboys. And even in this jungle, he is not safe either.
Yeah, Predator just enabling multiple flips, forcing out lots of flashes, and utilizing that gold lead means you can just kind of like force any fight you want when you're this far ahead and say, hey, we're fighting here now. Use your sums or die.
Yeah, and now Anthony being on this top lane all by himself, he may be the sacrificial lamb for the side of Nature's Wrath to get this mid lane. Ooh, but doing a lot of damage. It ends up being a massive switch, but not enough to be able to fight off that 1v2. He almost had it, but the Teditor heals coming in from his ultimate, just too much for Anthony to be able to handle.
Yeah, that kiting from Anthony was very well done. Unfortunately, they're going to die because Bork is going to be a little bit of slow, and Tediture being able to move so fast, supersonic with that phase rush is going to be able to push that. And this is going to be more gold for Mythic Esports. Getting this tower here is gold plus the objective bounty, which is going to sit at 250 at this point in the game. You know, we're still down around 6K, so it's been slipping a little bit more, but this vision setup might be enough to delay Ocean Soul, which is kind of what they need to be able to win here.
Yeah, it seems like this is going to be the next fight that comes out. It might be a true 5v5. Anthony definitely teleporting from behind. He will not have Meganar for a little bit of time, but it will not stop him from being able to try and fight for this.
Yeah,
Ooh,
the
getting a
Euro
little bit
trap.
of that bar out from the Wolves here. So he's actually almost Mecha right now. And now Anvino going in, using that magnetic pull, and the
Bullet
bullet time coming
time.
in. Massive damage. Teditor trying to go into this back lane, but does not do enough. Anthony doing so much damage into the back line of Mythic Esports. Pognometron running down VXX, and that will be 5 members down for the side of Mythic Esports, an ace coming out, and only Anvinel being the sacrificial lamb for their side.
Oh, it looks like that's
And
going to be an FF
yeah,
on
an
the side
FF
of
coming
Mythic.
out for Mythic Esports. The rest of the game not being played out. Something you don't see very often, but it did seem pretty doomed for the side of Mythic Esports. So although you can always fight back some of those backsides, I understand the sentiment there.
Yeah, Ocean Soul being as potent as it is, just think about how much more survivability you would have on Pog with more healing, more mana sustain with the poison trail. It's a lot to deal with.
Definitely a very hard time for the side of Mythic Esports to be able to fight that back, especially with a Sejuani, a Rel, a Singed, some of these champions that are known for just building pretty healthy, pretty tanky. Nara, I'm sorry as well. These 4 champions, only Misfortune not really using Ocean Soul as much as the other 4. Uh, but yeah, Ocean Soul being one of those really, really good souls for them to be able to get onto that side of basically 4 tanks.
Yeah, I mean, Misfortune's kind of mana hungry as well with your E costing like 60 or 80 mana, and your ultimate I know costs 100. And as an AD carrier, right, like you don't have that much mana built into your kit. You're certainly building any as well. So just a little more Q harass as well. Never hurt anyone, well, except for the enemy team.
Yeah, and so we will have to see about this game 2 coming out. Nature's Wrath versus Mythic Esports. Do you think there are any changes that Mythic Esports should be able to pull out in draft? Maybe see if there's any different combinations of champions that they should be able to put out. Maybe give them
There
a little bit of
might
a
be
better
a
chance.
singed ban, not gonna lie. Kind of
Yeah,
enabled a lot of the shenanigans to happen. Almost a yakety sax track being happening, but people were dying too fast for that to get into play.
yeah, definitely was extremely interesting to see that mid lane. Luckify putting a lot of pressure onto Singe there, making sure that he was able to get those early kills. Uh, so I had to give some credit to Luckify to make some of these different lanes be able to win out. Who would you
Yeah.
give that MVP to if you could?
Ooh. Paw kind of really set up a lot of those plays. They took some early kills and were giving it to a lot of their carries. So yeah, I think Pog would have to do it. The only other character I think I could think of is possibly Anthony getting that early triple, really transitioning in and getting a lot of those TP plays in and setting up their team as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Honestly, can't go wrong with any one of these champions. Pog doing a lot of work on that Singe, Anthony on that Gnar, absolutely kiting. Although he lost that 1v2, was making it extremely, extremely close for the side of Teditor and I'm sorry, I can't remember yet, but Yon as well. Well, yeah, that will be our game one. We will be back for game two, and we'll have to see which one of these teams ends up pulling back. Will be Nature's Wrath making this a 2-0 victory, or Mythic Esports bringing it back to game three?
Yeah, certainly. We'll be right back. Go. Okay.
All right, and welcome back to Mythic Esports versus sides this time. Mythic Esports taking over on the blue side, and Nature's Wrath taking their chances or taking their luck onto the red side. And now we already have some of these bans coming out. So not wanting to see Pognometron on this Aurelion Soul, and J4 also being taken away from the side of Greg. Jin as well. So the Jin one trick not being able to come out again.
Yeah, Jin is certainly a pretty good utility carry champion and can really burst down some of these squishier targets with his 4-shot doing percent missing health damage. So I don't blame them for banning it. I climbed pretty heavily last season because of Jin as a champion. Maokai being banned as well, pretty high on the priority pick. So it looks like Mythic isn't going to be picking it, and they want to make sure Nature's doesn't do it as well. Maybe we'll see a return of the Gragas. Maybe they'll feel like that's going to be it.
Yeah, it looks like we're just going to see the same 3 bans from both sides. So Mythic Esports not pulling out that Singe ban, not thinking that that was quite the threat. Maybe just playing a little bit safer or changing some of these picks out to make it less of an opportune time for Singed and Sejuani to come out with the combos. And looks like they're going to be taking Sejuani for themselves. So we have seen Sejuani go into the jungle in this last game, but Mythic Esports prefers to play their champion on Teditor, making sure that he gets that Sejuani. And we've seen that man really take over on that champion. I believe he went, it might have reset right now, but I believe he did very well on that champion. And Amumu Silas coming out as the answer.
Yeah, that's going to be a decent amount of lockdown. Amumu really enables a lot of this. Maybe we'll see another misfortune again. Pick 3 on the side of Nature's Wrath. And Silas already has a good ultimate to steal with Sejuani's. We'll have to see if there's any more. And he kind of warps games just a little bit. Rels isn't too bad as well, just being able to stick on. Should Mythic Esports decide to stick with this, and with the clock going as it is, it looks like that'll be the champion they're picking.
Yeah, Mythic Esports. Seems like we've seen one of these drafts here before, maybe just a few minutes ago, but from the other team. The Mythic Esports just copying over what Nature's Wrath had going for them in game 1, taking that Sejuani, that Rel. Maybe we'll see that misfortune right here. Would love to see it.
Yeah, doing the Great Russian strategy, just copying what your opponent did. If it worked in one game, it's got to work in the next one. And these are certainly both good players on each team, so they should be able to utilize these champions appropriately, do a lot of damage, and carry the game that way. Although we didn't see Talia last time, the
Yeah.
Great Wall going to be doing a lot there and going to be stopping some of this mobility as well.
Ooh. Would love to see that bullet time inside of a Mumu. And yeah, we are going to see that Nature's Wrath is still going to be able to get that magnetic storm in from Rel. Silas being able to steal that over, so maybe getting a Mumu, a magnetic storm over, Misfortune with her bullet time, and just making absolute chaos inside these team fights. But now we're going to see some of these bands coming out. Silas. Oh, yep. The Singe band coming out. Not Silas, sorry. The Singed and Renekton being the 2 bands so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of action top lane. So if we saw Gnar going off this well, just making sure he's protected and runs very well on the side of nature certainly makes sense. I'm going to predict that Mythic Esports is going to be doing some sort of counter strategy to Misfortune's bullet time, being it did so much damage, did a lot of control, and it's a channel, so it can be disrupted. So, like, Nautilus Ultimate obviously does it, which I wouldn't necessarily suspect, but, like, a Talia wall can disrupt it with the movement.
Yeah, it does become kind of hard for them to be able to disrupt it. Sejuani definitely being one of those champions that does not have to get close to be able to disrupt, but Rao being able to have that ability as well. Talia, yeah, that wall also having that. A little bit harder to be able to hit that one, but definitely not undoable. And especially with the uneven, I believe it's called uneven ground. Not 100% sure, but being able to get some of those knockbacks too. So taking that champion for themselves instead of the Singe over the head, it's going to be Talia with some rocks.
Ooh, a Thresh to go with it. The nice death box. It looks like this will be in a Mumu jungle then. Yeah, unless like a Mumu's top or something
Okay.
special spicy with Silas jungle or something, but I would not suspect that to be the case. And it looks like they'll be going for a counter pick top lane then, which
Yeah.
makes sense. It's the counter pick lane for sure. Do you have any expectations as to what Nature's Wrath might be playing top lane?
Not 100% sure. Anthony does have a lot of potential on side these these AD top lane fighters. Gangplank was definitely going to be one of the names that I chose, but Gangplank ends up being the pick for Mythic Esports. Definitely a very strong pick that we've seen with some of these crit changes. Unfortunately, he is one of those champions that is not very mobile. So we should be able to see Luckified make his way up there a few more times. And we'll have to see if Teditor is able to get out of those and maybe make some plays with himself. Try and get those barrels out, make some 2v1 interesting fights, or maybe
A
Greg could
classic.
come up too.
Good anti-dive. So if we see this Thresh
Hmm.
trying to go in, the Amumu trying to go in, Silas trying to go in, they're going to be able to answer.
Ooh.
Unfortunately for them, if they end up going for Olaf, Olaf will not care and is just going to be able to wail on whoever they want.
Yeah, and like I said, AD fighters, Olaf will be definitely one of those AD fighters that we'll see.
And,
And he will make Rel and Sejuani not have any option to be able to use that CC, making
and
Gangplank, Xayah, Talia, some of those definitely special targets for him to put himself on. Xayah really having only one of the abilities that can keep her safe for a little bit with that ultimate, but Gangplank and
yeah.
Talia just being wailed on if Olaf
What
is able to free hit.
what do you even do as Gangplank in top lane versus Olaf? You just kind of get axed over and over and run down from tower. How do you even scale as Gangplank here? This is an excellent counter pick on the side of Nature's Wrath, and it really rounds out their comp as well for whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it's definitely a really good pick from them. Olaf being able to play into that Gangplank. But it will have to do a lot of pressure onto these junglers as well. We'll have to see if Greg is able to make some differences. Maybe not in the top lane per se, but definitely in this mid lane. This Silas against this Misfortune, who, although has that speed, does not have the ability to get out for free. Uh, so yeah, we'll just have to see how some of this games plays out. Greg on this Sejuani and see if the difference is in the jungle or if the difference is in the lanes.
Yeah, we'll have to see for sure. Nature's Wrath is just going to be playing for some of these choke points, some of the objectives we saw before, and they're going to have some excellent team fights. We saw how well they rotated to start some of these fights and pull them off as well. So it's probably going to be more the same out of Nature's Wrath, especially if they get ahead. We know they know how to use this lead very well. It's going to be pretty potent. Mythic has a very good counter plan here. They're going to be able to scale good wave clear with Gangplank. Xayah's wave clear isn't as good early on, but in the later game, even with the minion reduction damage that you get from the feather recall, it still clears waves pretty well, and Talia can certainly clear them as well. So they're going to be able to set up some of these waves and get some counter pushes and possibly get ready for the objectives a little bit faster, being their wave clear is going to be better.
Yeah, if you had to say, what do you think the win con for Mythic Esports would be in this game?
Well, they certainly scale harder. Gangplank does starts off weak and goes off stronger. Olaf eventually falls off, and Xayah scales pretty hard. They even scale harder than champions like Kaisa, who are fairly late game as well. And Talia does a lot of damage. She's gonna be able to burst people up. So if they're able to get to the later stage of the game, they're going to be able to force out some of these fights and kind of just burst down a lot of targets or get the engage champions so low, like Thresh or Mumu, that they aren't going to want to be able to engage because they're going to be unhealthy.
Yeah, definitely have to agree there. It's going to be the late game for them to take over. Gangplank, as you said, making those barrels count, making those shots count as well from that pistol. And it will be one of those times where we see if he's able to make it out of this really brutal early game from Olaf and make it count in the mid and late game once those items start coming in. And yeah, that Feather Storm being definitely very interesting, very dangerous for the side of some of these champions on Nature's Wrath. Amumu, Silas, Olaf, these champions that have to go into that melee range, giving Xayah a perfect and ample opportunity to hit as many feathers as she can on that recall. So I think really it comes down to which team is able to engage first and which one is able to hit those special abilities, those crucial abilities for the damage in the CC.
The deciding factor for this game is going to be how well does Nature's Wrath get their early game advantage, because Misfortune is a lane bully. Olaf, very strong early on. And if they're able to get that lead, strong early on and then transition it into the mid game to create enough pressure to where scaling isn't going to be as much of a threat as Mythic Esports would be like. That's how Nature's Wrath is going to have to be able to play this.
Yeah, and we'll see if Mythic Esports is able to answer back into this game too. Answer back and see if they can make this a 1-1 score, or if Nature's Wrath will be able to carry and end it up 2-0 for this victory. We will take a small break as these champions start, preparing their loadouts, making sure that they get the right runes, the right summoners, and then get that 3 minute speed ahead of us as we go into spectator mode. So don't go anywhere. Right now, Nature's Wrath 1-0 against their counterparts in Mythic Esports. All right, and welcome back to Mythic Esports versus the side of Nature's Wrath. So far, 1-0 for the side of Nature's Wrath, and we're going to have a little bit of spicy coming out from Nature this time. Maybe going for a 5-stack early on. No vision coming out from Mythic Esports, so it could possibly be a pick if they're able to see VXS in this bot bush, but looks like he will spot them out before any danger actually comes in. So no early action coming in. Maybe an early board, but that's about it.
Yeah, the 5 point, pretty good defense at this point, standing pretty safe there, able to just go out, not being able to be turret dived. Rel's able to kind of stay safe with that extra shield. The exhibition doesn't hurt knowing where the jungler is going to be starting. Like I said in game one, just knowing where they're going to start allows you to play around where they might be, possible gank angles and timers, and maybe splitting the map as well should the game come to that.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to see Greg actually starting on this top side. Amumu going for these wolves. Some clears that aren't necessarily seen too often. Not sure about the Amumu, but definitely not the Sejuani. So it's just going to be a full clear from here. And Olaf actually looking for maybe an early cheese onto this gangplank. And it goes for these first minions instead. So not too much early action happening yet.
And not too much early action to be sure. I think what's going on here is Luckified and Greg are trying to play on the same side so that they're able to match. And the only way for Luckified to stop the top side of the map is to be going for Raptors, or they could just be playing to gank a gangplank, forcing out to use the oranges early on to cancel out the CC.
Yeah, definitely. Making sure that that speed up is not ending up, or sorry, that slowdown is not ending up being the issue here. A lot of trading coming out from Pognometron and Phil here. So definitely going to have to keep our eyes on this battle coming in. The dashes from Pog definitely playing into the hands of Talia with the uneven ground. So we'll have to see if that ends up being a difference maker in some of these 1v1s.
Yeah, we'll have to see if that makes a difference at all. Silas or Pog won't be able to dash in because of the minefield that's going to be happening. Can't play Minesweeper. We are playing League of Legends here, and dashing in there could be a death sentence for them, especially if Thresh comes in.
Yeah, and we have to look at both these junglers doing full clear so far, but Amumu looks like he might actually be going for some early vision or some early invades, but does not have the top or bot lane on their side pushing in. So he's,
Oh, a
actually just going
juicy
straight for
gank
this bot
angle.
lane. Ladyboy and VXS are going to be caught off guard. And Anvil going for that ignite. The flash coming in. Ladyboy having to use that cleanse flash as well. VXS still having his flashes instead. And the flash coming out, so no kills. But all three summoners burn from the side of the bot lane of Mythic Esports. Luckified being very dangerous, not having his flash in return, but not quite. So Greg, yeah. Greg
Very
trying to come
important
down
that
and fill as well.
Yeah, very important that they had to bring down 4 people there because that gives Pog a roam timer there, a cleanse, of course, saving the play for the side of Mythic. It was very well played by Avel.
Yeah,
Flaying
like you
first
said,
enables the hook.
Pog actually being able to get that roam timer right now. Teditor still unaware and looks like he will now notice that he is going to be dead in the water. No mana, no health, and no way to get out of here. A flash, but just being burned away for no reason. Anthony having to burn his in the chase, but still falling instead. Ooh, but
Play's not
Pognometron now
over.
being caught on the way back. Phil trying to get a lot of damage, but Tog just doing the best skill in the game. It's called ignore and keep walking forwards. Definitely one of
Yep.
those
The Garen, as I like to call it.
really one of those skills that isn't seen very often in this game, but definitely very underrated.
Yeah. That top play, or it looks like Phil
Ooh.
is going to be engaged on by Pog
Ooh,
here.
but Pog getting the pullback, not quite enough damage. The grounds just giving those 1 hits and going into the minions. So not even hitting Pog there. And having that TP looks like not too much is going to be lost here with the push into the turret.
Yeah, just winding back here, that rotation really helped Anthony get a lead, which of course you want as Olaf, getting the wave shoved in as Gangplank. Not too hard. and not quite having the vision set up, getting caught out there. You know, the the Titanic, or no, it's not even called a Titanic. The Tiamat, there we go. Being pulled out early on is going to help him with some of that wave clear, get some of that extra damage, and be an early game monster like we saw before.
Yeah, it's definitely an early item for him to come out and really giving him that ability to trade out some of that ability to push minions. Although that axe is a very good ability to have, the Tiamat definitely doesn't hurt. Pognometron definitely taking a lot of damage in this mid lane, and the giant wall being taken as his first stolen ultimate. We're
Yeah,
gonna have to look at this top lane though. Luckified and Greg both being here. Anthony and Teditor both thinking they have the upper hand, but not quite. Luckified using that recall, but seems like they know. Pognometron running straight into Craig, and looks like they want the smoke. Luckified trying to get it, but Pognometron maybe going a little bit too deep, almost losing his life, but not quite the healing. Oh, but does end up falling. Tentator falling as well. Greg almost losing his life, but not enough damage coming out. So Luckified and Pog making that trade over. Pog dying for the cause, and Anthony getting another kill underneath his belt.
yeah, the final frozen stack doing it. It looks like
Ooh.
Phil might be caught out
Anthony
here.
actually ends up using that Ragnarok, and
Oh my.
Phil being caught out actually burns the flash on the way out of there. Maybe the way out into the underworld, not quite to safety. And now it is a advantage in the mid lane in the summoner department.
Yeah, Phil thinking, hey, I'm safe here. I've got a lot of pushback, a lot of damage that I can dish out. And then Olaf
Ooh.
saying, no.
We actually had to look as well. Teditor being caught on the other side. Luckified doing enough CC
Oh,
and just backing out, but Teditor falling as well. Luckified coming in just for the fun of it. And that is another kill going to Anthony. Anthony 4-0 before 8 minutes even appears. So just as you said, that early game for Anthony being one of those brutal things inside of this matchup for game playing versus Olaf, it's really showing off right now.
yeah, 4 kills on an Olaf at 8 minutes is a lot of kills. That's a lot of gold. Probably going to be some plates as well. And with only 40 CS and a kill on Tediture, that's not a lot of gold you want to be seeing on your hyper carry. Which means some of these rift plays could happen early. This could transition into a lot of extra plate for more gold to secure a lead even more. On top of which, there's a lot of pressure as well. Rift 2 might be coming on this side as well to really push the pressure even further.
Yeah, definitely. One of those things to just push that lead. You said before the game started to see if how Nature's Wrath is able to push in that early lead and where those advantages go. They're going exactly to one of those champions that we're talking about, where it becomes so hard for them to actually be able to push him back and make sure he's not doing the damage. With that Ragnarok, he's just going to be able to run straight through the other team. And yeah, it's
The
just going to be
dash.
super hard for them to really be able to do anything in this top lane.
Yeah, although things are pretty hard in the top lane. Oh,
Ooh, Luckified looking forward. The ultimate coming out and ends up being enough CC and enough damage for Pognometron to pick that one up. The curse of the sad mummy
yeah,
being
don't
way too much CC for Phil.
Yeah, don't call this man luckified. Call this man skillified. Hitting a lot of those skill shots, enabling all of these kills, and getting some more gold leads on his team members is going to be very potent. Setting up here for a potential dragon with how bot's been shoved at mid lane is kind of at a neutral state right now, but with how Pog has been able to transition, that might not matter all that much.
Yeah, this first Drake going over to the side of Nature's Wrath. And that Infernal Drake, one of those Drakes that's just going to push this lead even more with that early damage. Silas, Misfortune, and Olaf all loving that first one. Believe it's 6%, I believe. Yeah, 6% attack damage in AP. So, although not huge early on, it's definitely going to be one of those stacking abilities with that early Hydra on Olaf.
Yeah, with that early Hydra, that 6% is going to mean a lot more, especially when you have so much lifesteal on your character.
Yeah, Pognometron is really going to be pushing, or sorry, Anthony is really going to be pushing that lead farther in. The Ghost making sure that Teditor is not able to escape with no CC. Even that orange is only good for one axe, and with that repeat, it's just going to be becoming worse and worse. Hitting that first axe, it's always super dangerous for Teditor to be able to push up.
Oh,
And yeah, second axe. So it's not even
never
about the
missing.
slows. It's just about the constant damage and harassment that he's under.
Yeah, the amount of harass here. One of the things I got to note here is last game we saw a lot mid and bot side, but it looks like a lot of action's been transitioning more over to top, where we're seeing a lot of 4 of the 5 kills on the side of Nature's is in top lane on BC Anthony.
Yeah, and we've seen what he's able to do with that lead. On that Gnar, he was able to push it and even make it really close in those 2v1s. So if you're Nature's Wrath, you are not at all afraid for that man to be able to have all the kills on your team. A lot of damage almost going on to Anvinel, getting a little dangerous, but not quite hitting that CC. Ooh, an excellent shot from Misfortune there.
Yeah, just like I predicted earlier, we're seeing an early Rift Herald. Mumu doesn't take it that well, but when Olaf has a Hydra at 10 minutes, you're able to take it pretty fast. This is going to be the first Herald. No towers are in any danger right now. 4 plates in the top side. They're going to be able to take 2 more with the Herald. Oh, but it's stolen!
Actually stolen away from Greg here. A perfect smite on his side. And yeah, trying to get some type of lead back in this early lane. That is one of the ways to do it. Ooh, but we're going to have to watch Anthony actually ends up making sure that Teditor does not have a free kill. Ragnarok coming out, so even Greg is not able to save him. Oh, getting the kill just before, but he will. Actually, no, not enough. This lifesteal coming out. Greg ends up falling in the 2v1.
Trouble?
Anthony, that massive healing from Hydra. The very low health stats that Olaf is able to gain, the attack speed, the healing, enough to keep him alive from that last turret shot that I thought would actually have marked his grave, and ends up not being enough.
And with, boots as well, tier 2 boots here, not going to be taking as much damage. He's going to be able to go in safer. Pog, though, getting chunked here by Phil. A lot of damage.
Ooh, the flash coming out, but not quite fast enough. The ignite coming from the spellbook. I bet he didn't think that was coming through and ends up being his life there.
Yeah, he was able to get an early row. So he's sitting at 2 stacks here way before Phil was able to get their mythic. But the thing is, that item needs to kind of sit, wait, get its charges up before you're able to really utilize it. Which means he has a 0 countered or stacked Dark Seal.
Yeah, no stacks on that Dark Seal. But we do have some stacks on that Rod of Ages. So although he doesn't have the early damage and stuff, although Anthony is now catching Phil out here, not knowing he was sitting on the other side of the wall. Ragnarok coming, and again, the CC does not matter. It looks like there's going to be a little bit of a lane swap, and even more of those plates going over to the side of Anthony. 3 going over in that top lane, and now what looks like maybe 1, 2 more going over there. Pognometron now trying to hit this fight onto Teditor as well, showing that he can get some solo kills too on him, and not quite enough damage, not enough slows for him to be able to take that kill.
Oh my gosh, the wave being destroyed by the axe with 40 stacks in the Hydra. A lot of damage. We're already sitting at about a 3k, 4k gold lead right now at 14 minutes, with the early game being done with the 14-minute mark. The plates are going to be falling off. And we're going to be entering the mid game, and we'll have to see if this gold lead is going to stick around or if the scaling on the side of Mythic Esports is going to push them away.
Yeah, if I had to guess, you said a 3k gold lead inside of this matchup. I bet about half of that gold lead is going straight into this top matchup, Olaf versus Gangplank. Olaf having so much gold over his opponent. And it's just going to be very interesting. But now Pognometron's turn to be able to take the side of all of this CC. The ultimate coming out from from Teditor. Cannon Barrage just having enough slows for Pognometron not to be able to handle that. But that does end up meaning a Drake is going to go over to the side of Nature's Wrath for the side of Greg being top.
That lane swap meant that Teditor has a little bit more breathing room. He's able to get some of this farm, and he doesn't have to worry about an axe being thrown at his face. Of course, Bill's died a couple more times as a result, but that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. Olaf now going back into that top lane. And it looks like the lead will just continue inside of that lane. And 40 stacks on that Hydra. He is unfazed with the side of Teditor and Greg now, knowing that he can do that 2v1 underneath the turret.
Yeah, the Rift Herald finally happened to be used here. That was stolen so early on. Rift isn't going to be coming for another 2 minutes, so it might be taken.
Ooh, and Ragnar coming out. Teditor ends up falling just one more time to his opponent. Not even to the axe, but to the minions. VXS is trying to go for
Bullet
that kill
time.
himself. And the going golden may end up not being the savior, but it ends up doing it. The flash coming out right afterwards, and the hook from Thresh just missing.
Yeah, just missing the death sentence there, and Strut being chunked out with a nice feather, poking it out, so Xeno is not going to be able to follow up. Although
Ooh,
that's an
but the hook
instant
hitting there,
cleanse.
the immediate cleanse, and now the magnetic shield. Oh, VXS ends up just living, but now the fight in mid lane, Pognometron getting hit
Oh,
with the
the
ultimate
mist.
and missing the one that he stole from Greg. So now he gets hit with one and misses his own, and he will end up falling for the sins.
Yeah, a lot of action happening in the bot lane and the mid lane here, just kind of waiting for nature to kind of go in to try and play out their gold leads. And when things weren't played quite properly, Mythic said, hey, we know how to play this. Come in, secured some of those kills, and that's going to help keep some of that gold lead on them. Of course, some of these towers might be still falling with how massive Anthony is because of the early game that nature was able to accrue.
Yeah, definitely a very strong lead coming out, but that lead is not actually through the team. It is just through Anthony. So Pognometron having to still remind himself that he is not quite ahead of his counterparts. And Anvinel
Yeah,
Zeno almost having that first fight, but not having the second one. That magnetic storm just doing too much work.
yeah. Look at Olaf's Mythic here. Not something I would have expected. It's very exciting to see how that's going to be playing. I was expecting more of like a Jack show to kind of stay healthy in front, but this is going to work just as well with the Radiant Virtue.
Ooh, now the
Phil,
splash coming out from Phil. And it ends up, the pushback ends up being enough. And now Pognometron Luckified trying to take the fight into VX or H and Tedidor, and not quite having enough damage to take both of
yeah,
those
missing
both
the
those champions out.
bandage.
So yeah, a lot of fighting in this mid lane, in this top lane, but not enough for any of these champions to fall on either side.
Yeah, dodging some of the necessary skill shots, but being chunked out as they are, this means a Rift Herald's can be taken. And this could be enough to just crack open the mid lane, like we saw last time. Top lane fell, then mid lane fell, and that slowly pushed over and bled into the game. We're already sitting at 2 dragons. It's going to be coming up relatively soon, though. It's like a minute and 30. So in the next 30 seconds, we're probably going to be seeing some backs, getting some wards, refilling, maybe some more resets, depending on how these gold leads are going to go for the power spikes, and set up for Soul Point on the side of Nature's, where they might be trying to prevent it on the side of Mythic Esports.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be a little bit of a setup. The side of Nature's Wrath may be a little bit wary of this Baron coming up in just a minute, knowing that last game's Baron was stolen
That's
away
true.
underneath their noses.
That is very true. That counter Baron play did really slow the game down for Mythic Esports and was very well done. And it's possible they could be doing this as well with the Scuttle Crab being down and having some control wards early in to their half of the jungle in the river. Although with how Anthony is sitting right now, it looks like we're going to be accruing some sort of a push here and going for the dragon should Luckify come back and have Smite and their power spikes ready to go. Or they'll have a play mid lane and push with Rift Herald to kind of make Mythic Esports make an uncomfortable choice if they want to be trying to save mid lane or if they care about Soul Point more.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be one of those choices and where they choose. It may be one of those things where they keep a few members in that top side or in the mid lane for some early move overs and just take this Drake. And it looks like that may actually be the option. Although Greg is on that bot side, it would have to be one of those suicide calls that he goes for, trying to get that Drake away. But we have seen him do it with the Rift Herald, so he may be able to get it with this Drake if they end up answering that one over. Olaf already starting it by himself, though the vision does come down, so they do know. But yeah, looks like Greg is just going to be giving that one up instead.
Yeah, mid lane, just like I foresaw. Rift Toad coming through. Of course, I don't think a second charge is going to be happening. Be the eye there. And Anthony's just kind of soloing the Hex Dragon right here. We'll have to see if it's going to get stolen here or not. It looks like it's going to be falling for the red team, Natures. And Hex is pretty potent. A little bit more attack speed on any of these characters is more potent. And just some cooldown reduction as well is pretty nice to be having just for free.
Yeah, and we're also going to keep in mind that now that is going to be soul point. So in at 26 minutes, the fourth Drake will be coming out, and that may be the difference in between Hextech Soul being taken by the side of Wraith, the side of Wrath, or if that's just another 5 minutes that Wrath has to wait to try and fight that one again. So yeah, in the meantime, we do have that Baron up, some of the stacking up of gold coming from the side of from the side of Mythic Esports. Definitely not complaining about this calm period and trying to get some of these lead backs in the gold for gameplay. Gain that second item out. Executioner's calling as well, so some of the healing definitely being reduced for the side of Nature's Wrath.
Yeah. Oh. Anthony's going to be able to play safe enough here, as is. We got to talk about how there's only like a 2,000 gold difference between blue side and red side. And the mid game is kind of starting to end at this point. And with Barons coming into play, we're getting into the later stages of the game with. Okay, it looks like Greg's going to be fine here. Greg approaching a third item, having all of the crit that they would necessarily need to get this explosive lead. And 2,000 gold can be dropped. You can drop that lead and it can be transitioned to a 2,000 gold lead on your side and use that to take the game as a more scaling composition.
Yeah, especially some of these bounties coming out. Basically 1,000 gold for free going over to the person who ends up taking out Anthony. And so that's definitely one of those kills, and where if you get that on one of your carries, especially this Gangplank or this Xayah, Teditor and Ladyboys, being able to move that into a strong lead for some of these next team fights. So that's always going to be something that Anthony keeps in mind, making sure that that goal does not go over to those two carries.
Yeah, making sure that lead does not get transferred over. 1,000 gold certainly makes a difference, especially when your gold lead is as small as it is, and your early game is over. So Anthony's gonna have a harder time getting that back, and losing all those stacks kind of matters too. Of course, you can farm to get it back, but you're gonna be weaker, even slower out of spawn as well, rather than with like your standard item, like a random omen, for example.
Yeah, that Randon's coming out for Olaf here. But yeah, the slowdown's definitely becoming a little bit more potent for him, those axes, and now Randon's coming as well. So having that ability, VXS ends up going in, and the ultimate coming out from Greg, but not quite enough. Luckified with those Merc Treads, and now the TP's coming out. Olaf coming from the side. Ragnarok still available for him, and it looks like he will hold it for now. Olaf still running forward. Some flashes from Pognometron, the magnetic storm coming out, and a lot of damage going through. Ragnarok finally being used, running into that backline, but he is taking a lot of damage and now having to back up. A lot of damage coming out from Xenodrix and Pognometron, but almost dying. Oh my gosh, it is a massacre on both sides. Now Anthony's turn to go right back in. Teditor falling, and Phil is the last person on this team to be able to take it. No Ragnarok available, so the CC is coming through, but so does the Conqueror. The healing coming back to save his life. 3 members falling for the side of Nature's Wrath, the Ace coming out, and the mid lane turret being theirs for the taking.
Yeah, Radiant Virtue's already healed for nearly 2,000 at this point, coming out of Anthony. So it's been paying dividends here. Of course, Ladyboys play that pretty well with a good ultimate setup, getting the recall. When with Xeno and Luckified and Evo being so low, they were able to get some kills and assists there, setting up their team and pushing things back. But unfortunately, with how the early game ended up playing out, Anthony was able to just kind of run things down, get some of those bigger item spikes, and survive. It was not by a lot that they were able to survive. That lifesteal really coming into play there. And should any more heal cut happen, and that might be enough to stop some of that earlier healing we saw.
Yeah, it was definitely a very interesting fight. Mythic Esports, that was probably one of the best fights they could ask for. Ladyboy just getting free healing, and with the recall on those feathers in that little corridor, he was hitting so many people.
Yeah.
Teditor as well with those barrels. Not quite sure if he was able to hit any, wasn't able to see too well. But now we have another standoff with this Drake. This soul point, like we said, 26 minutes ends up being the difference. And now it's time for Anthony to be able to go in again. Ragnarok coming out. And now this time, ends up falling to the side of Greg. But now two members going over to the side of Nature's Wrath. Greg almost falling as well, trying to take out Luckify, but not quite enough. Luckified ends up living and Greg falls, but the side of Ladyboys and Phil ends up taking out Pognometron and Anvanel. And so now three members down for both sides. The jungler in 80 carry surviving for Nature's Wrath, and the 80 carry in mid surviving for Mythic Esports.
Yeah, 1,000 gold and stopping soul at this point is very important that you want to be seeing on Mythic. And you have enough damage to potentially be taking Dragon here as well. It's a little risky with all these Hex Tech gates, being able to just kind of move and transition. It enables a lot of different plays, a lot more mobility on champions that you wouldn't be expecting it on, especially with Thresh's Lantern, being able to just kind of yoink team members over and really just kind of like fireman chain them down over to wherever you need them.
Yeah, and it looks like as you're saying that Mythic Esports is using that to make their way back down to Drake for round number 2 of this soul point fight. Now these ultimates being back up for some of the champions, but not quite for others. The important ones being back for the side of Nature's Wrath. But Ladyboy's not having his escape. There's no wall and there's no cannon barrage. So it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how Mythic Esports ends up playing this one out. The Drake is being started, 6,500 health left. And now the calling coming out from the side of Nature's Wrath, and already we have Ragnarok making a large difference. Two carries going out, Teditor and Ladyboys going through, while VXS is on the other side falling. And now it's just being a rundown to see who can get Greg using that Hextech gate to be able to get out of here and trying to get the steal, but not quite low enough. 4 members falling for the side of Mythic Esports, and the fight did not go the same way as the last two, unfortunately for them.
Yeah, and it looks like they're going to be transitioning into Baron here. All of those ultimates being on cooldown, able to utilize that, plus the gold lead was enough to do that. You think the slow on Olaf's axes is bad enough? Wait until you slap a Hex Tech Soul in there. The extra slow, the extra damage just means their whole team's going to be able to run you down. And some of those engages from Avel and Luckify are going to be a lot easier to land because you're slowed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. The slow's just definitely coming through, and now having that Gargoyle Stone Plate is going to make Olaf even harder to kill. And it's just going to be a rough time for the side of Mythic Esports to be able to take out this Ragnarok god.
Yeah, especially when he's able to get some of these stacks back onto his Ravenous Hydra as well. And the red buff, more gold, more slows, more damage on a very strong champion who's 3 levels up right now on Tediture 2000. It's not looking so great on the side of Mythic Esports. We've seen them play at our disadvantage and do some very good plays. So there is a chance they do this, but this might be a 2-0. It might be the case that where that happens.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very hard time for them to be able to fight it, but they are going for it now. Anvanel being the first target. Pognometron being caught on the wrong side of the wall, but Ladyboy is getting very low. Going golden is Pognometron, and flashing out he goes, but not enough damage to able to take out Anvanel either. And now the flash for Luckified, being able to get that massive sad call of the mummy, and damage coming out from either side, but ends up being to his detriment. He ends up falling, and so does his mid laner Pognometron, but not before answering back Phil and Ladyboy. Greg and VXS also being fallen. Anthony not even being in that fight, being in the top lane, and it looks like that actually may be the end of the game.
Yeah, Xeno getting the third item right before Lady Luck is a pretty big deal as an AD carry. And
Ooh,
the Q bounce is really jank on how it bounces. So securing Phil there and securing Tediture, that's a lot of wave push that they're not going to be able to answer. And Anthony's just too big. Going to be wailing on the enemy Nexus.
yeah, it looks like that is the end of game two. A 2-0 victory for the side of Nature's Wrath. Mythic Esports seed number one inside of this bracket of Ionia ends up falling to the loser's side for this next round. Nature's Wrath ends up being able to continue their victories from the previous best of three. And
Yeah, and
now a great side from both of them.
yeah, it was greatly played by both. I enjoyed watching both of these games. And wasn't Mythic Esports the seed one for this division?
Yes, they were.
So yeah, a bit of an underdog play here on the side of Nature's Wrath, able to secure these games quite decisively with an early game lead. You know, we talked about who was MVP last time. Who do you think was the ace on the side of esports?
On the side of esports, I definitely have to give it to the side of Phil being able to constantly being able to trade over into Pognometron, making some excellent walls that ended up being one of those different makers inside that first soul point Drake that we saw. And even that last fight, there's an excellent wall catching out Anvinel and catching out Pognometron on the wrong side of it, making sure that they're split up. Although it did not end up being their victory in the end, it was a great fight from him being able to push back onto that team.
Yeah, I would agree. And more importantly, they weren't dying to Anthony early on as well, right? Like when he had that big lead and they had that swap within there, that was what kind of led the game to be the way it was. Preventing some of that extra gold lead would have, or like if they ended up getting that extra gold lead, is what I'm trying to say. The game would have been shorter, more than likely, with how potent Anthony was on that Olaf pick.
Yeah, 100%. It was a great time being able to see him really pilot some of these champions. That Nar from game one, this Anthony, or sorry, this Olaf from game two. Uh, First taking out Phil on that Yone and now Teditor on that Gangplank. So really just showing the skill on that champion. It was a great showing from the side of Nature's Wrath, really all throughout. Xenodrix and Amphanel really taking control on that bot lane, making sure that there's no lead that Ladyboy and VXS could really take over. Pognometron doing his share in game one and even in game two as well, stealing some of those really good ultimates, making sure that they're, trading back some of those ultimates onto the other team. And Anthony, as we know, Luckify too, definitely doing a lot of work. Don't want to take away from him. In that Sejuani first game, doing a lot of work inside of mid lane, inside of top lane, and even in that bot lane too, making a lot of those ultimates count. And in this Amumu, getting some of those bandage casts, and now that's called Curse of the Sad Mummy as well.
Yeah, it was very well played. Set up a lot of those engages, a lot of utility coming out of bullet time on the side of Xeno, who did pretty well, not securing the early game as much as they needed. But with how the game was going already, they didn't necessarily need to. That would have been doing unnecessary risks. So playing very well, disciplined on the side of Nature's Wrath as well. I have to give kudos to them. Kudos to them.
Yeah. If you did have to give MVP for the side of Nature's Wrath, not for this game or not for last game, but the series in total, who would you give it to?
I think I would have to give it to Anthony because of how well they were able to engage the early game in game one, use their TPs, push. They got that early triple as well, and they carried game two as well with how much damage they did as well. The only other contender I could possibly see is Luckify. They were able to float around and really help a lot of their lanes, get a lot of these objectives, and create the pressure that they needed to as the jungler.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there on both of those calls. Well, yeah, that will be all that we have for tonight. A 2-0 victory from Nature's Wrath into Mythic Esports. So this is going to be a great time to see how the Ionia division ends up falling into some of these later bracket runs. These semifinals and these finals come in, I think, in the next week. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, we'll have to see how these games go out. So that'll be
Yeah.
all for us for tonight.
Yeah, it was lovely to cast with you, Inigo Montoya's. We'll see you all next week on the Rift or whenever the next game ends up being cast.